Hello, everyone. Welcome back. I want to talk to you guys about getting suppressors out of the NFA. So right now we're in May of 2025, and it is absolutely certain that absolutely nothing will pass through Congress. Okay, Democrats are going to stop everything. Okay, everything and anything. So there's like absolutely no chance that any get through the Senate where a 60% vote is required to break the filibuster. Okay, so you only need a 50% vote to pass things through the Senate, but they have this concept of a filibuster where essentially, in order for something to proceed to a vote, you need 60%. Okay, and this is like a holdover from the days where people would actually get up and talk continuously. In order to delay the vote. Okay, now they kind of did away with the need to actually talk continuously, and they made it easier on themselves. And they need a 60% vote in order to proceed to a vote. So there's absolutely no way that is going to happen, and that any legislation, let alone gun rights legislation, is going to pass the Senate. However, there is an exception, right, that has been worked into the Senate procedures where tax-related matters, budget-related matters can go through on a continuing resolution, right, where they're not subject to the filibuster rule, and you only need 50% to pass it through the Senate, and that's how they got the budget funding continuing resolution to pass like a couple of months ago. Okay, so that extended it, I believe, all the way to September. So in September, they're going to have to vote on another continuing resolution. Okay, so with these continuing resolutions, where basically what they do is they agree to extend the previous budget, okay, and they say, okay, since we're just extending the previous budget, we only need a 50% vote in the Senate, 50% in the House, and no filibuster rules apply in the Senate. But what they do is even though it's really not supposed to be, there's not supposed to be any changes, they still do make some changes. And there's only so far they can go as changes, but again, they did make some changes the last time. They always make some changes. So as far as the getting suppressors out of the NFA, the important thing to know there, right, is that the NFA was originally passed, right, as a tax. Okay, they call it a tax stamp. Okay, the reason why they did that is because back in 1934, there was almost no court that would basically allow any anti-gun legislation to stand, right? Because back then nobody really questioned the Second Amendment. Basically it says, back then, shall not be infringed meant exactly that, shall not be infringed. So since they couldn't pass any infringing laws through the Congress, right, what they did is say, okay, this is not really an infringement, this is going to be a tax. Okay, so they're very upfront about that. So the NFA is a tax. So since it is a tax, it could be put through on one of these continuing budget resolutions, right? And basically, they could repeal the entire NFA. They could kind of sneak it in there. Okay. Now, there's no way that Republicans are going to have the spine to repeal the entire NFA, but they're either going to do the suppressors, or they're going to do or they're going to try and pull out the SVRs. Maybe if they really grow a spine, they'll take out both, but they're never going to, at this point anyway, they're not going to try to sneak in taking out the automatic firearms. So they're going to, basically we have to try and take apart the NFA piecemeal. Okay, so again, since the NFA was originally put through as a tax, right, and the ATF was actually a tax agency that was tied to the IRS, it is like 100% reasonable, rational, justifiable that they could sneak they could sneak taking the suppressors out of the NFA in the next continuing resolution, okay, which again it only requires that 50% vote. No, it's not subject to a filibuster. And because, remember, this would be like a tiny part of a much larger budget, okay? It's one of those things where like a lot of these, these rhino Republicans might go along for the purpose of keeping the government running, right? If they sneak it in that way, because I don't think that rhinos will vote for just a standalone bill, like the Hearing Protection Act, to take suppressors out of the NFA. I mean, at this point, I have very little confidence that even that all Republicans would go along with that. I think that there's a lot of them that will vote against it. But if we put it in this continuing resolution, where now the goal of these rhinos is to keep the government open, right? For their own purposes, for the purposes of them getting paid, there's a really good chance that this could pass. Okay, so I really like this idea. The place where I got this idea from was the Four Boxes Diner. Okay, basically that channel is run by Mark Smith, who's a constitutional scholar that basically focuses on Second Amendment related issues. The guy's an absolute expert. That's somebody that you should follow, not just because he's an expert, but because he's somebody that, for example, talks in front of the Federalist Society. He's somebody that writes papers, writes books, does speeches, and that judges and high-level lawyers listen to. Okay, so that's the Four Boxes Diner, right? FOUR, Four Boxes Diner. Again, the guy's name is Mark Smith. You guys should absolutely follow this guy. He really knows his stuff. So yeah, I think this is our best chance of getting the suppressors and maybe the SBRs out of the NFA, because absolutely nothing is going to pass through Congress. In fact, even like Schumer last time voted, like finally, he because there was a question of him like shutting down the government or going along with this continuing resolution. And he took a lot of flack from the Democrats. Basically, he pretty much caused an open civil war within the Democrat Party. So there's absolutely no way. So there's absolutely no way that the Democrats this time are going to go along with this continuing resolution. So what's going to happen in September is the government will shut down. Okay, it's going to shut down. The question is now, will it be weeks or months? I think it's going to be months, which in a way is also good, because what's going to happen is when the government shuts down, basically the president gets to decide what are essential services, and he gets to keep the things running that he thinks are important, and the things that he does not think are important get shut down. And that was Schumer's line of thinking, which is correct, but most Democrats are nuts, so they didn't go, they didn't understand his line of thinking. So this time around, what I'm absolutely sure Schumer will do is going to say, hey, you know what? They didn't believe me last time. This time I'm going to let the government shut down and then see where things go. I think he's going to take the position of let the radical left in his party go running to him and demand that he get the government open again. Okay, that's the strategy that Schumer is going to take. And I think at that point, right, when we get like a month, 2 months, 3 months, maybe 4 months into a government shutdown, I think the longer that shutdown continues, I think that Republicans should continue to add more things, right, add more benefits into this bill to benefit us. Because the longer the government shutdown lasts, the more desperate Democrats are going to get. Okay, so the longer it lasts, the more Republicans can continue to throw in there. So maybe at that point they could scrap the entire NFA. I mean, I wouldn't hold my breath on that, but I like where this is going. I think that this is the best chance of us scoring a real victory on gun rights. I mean, we've had a couple of things that have been working in our favor. mainly through the executive branch. Like they did away with the engaged in the business rules, but they're really minor things. I mean, we can, like for example, I mean, if you, let's say you were to build a suppressor, right? I don't think that the ATF would come after you. I mean, I just don't think that they have they want that publicity, right? So even if you made a homemade suppressor, posted a video on it, which I don't recommend, I don't think that this administration will come after you, which is not to say that a future one wouldn't, but this administration would not come after you. In the short term, we have scored some victories through the executive branch. The kind of the heat is off. SBR rules are, not SBR rules, but the pistol brace rule is dead. Frames and receiver rule is dead, even though the Supreme Court ruled against us. ATF is not enforcing it. So if you sell an 80% frame, I mean, nobody's ever gonna, I mean, you would never get prosecuted even if you made a video saying that you're doing this. I mean, the ATF would never come after you. The problem that we have with the 80% is that, like, Polymer 80 essentially was driven out of business, right? They filed for bankruptcy. So you can't get the original, Polymer 80s. Now, there are some other companies that are selling like 78%, stuff like that. So I'm not too crazy about those. I haven't built any of those. I have enough of the original P80s stockpiled that, truth is, I don't even build them anymore. I've already built so many P80s that, what am I going to do with them? I've got plenty of guns to shoot. So those are my thoughts on, I think this is the place, the way that we can get a long-term permanent victory is through, trying to push something through the continuing resolutions, particularly the suppressors, and maybe even getting the SVRs out of them. Now, if they do make some change, you're probably going to have some questions like, what does this mean in my state? Because remember, states can have their own laws, right, that are more stringent than the federal government. So, and usually, anytime something like this comes up, or the courts come up with some new decision, I get a lot of people messaging me, and what I tell them is, listen, don't take my word for it. Don't trust anybody else on the internet. What you need is a prepaid lawyer, or somebody that you can email and they can answer your questions, right? And you get the answer in writing. You can save it, print it out, and you have it for for future reference. And it has to be somebody that you pay. It doesn't matter if you're paying them 50 cents. The fact that you're paying them something, right? Even 1 cent, right? You have to pay them something, because now you are legally their client, and you have a reason to rely on the information that they provide you. So the payment part is important, okay? So the one that I use is US Lawshield, okay? The reason why I use them, they owe me like $10 a month. Try to get the light right over here. $10 a month. If you use this promo code, I believe right now you're getting like the first month free. So the promo code is Pocono Shooting. You put that, you just type Pocono Shooting into the discount or the code field. Okay, and again, it's only $10 a month, and it's US Lawshield. You have to do it through the website. The website is what is that? I can't see it right there. uslawshield.com. Okay, so. And I don't get like a commission or anything from these guys. I don't, the reason why I use them for just primarily so I can ask them questions. And also when I train people and they ask me these questions, I don't want to get into legal stuff. I want to say, okay, here's a cheap lawyer, go ask them the questions. Now, if you also get into a self-defense type of situation, yes, they will also cover you for that. However, the chances of anybody actually getting into a self-defense type of situation is so small that I don't like. That's not the main reason why I advise people to have a prepaid lawyer. It's so that they can ask legal questions and get the answer from a credible source that they can rely on. Okay, so So I want to just kind of put that out there because, again, I get lots of messages sometimes. People will they're trying to get an answer out of me, and I will give people the best answer that I have. However, it's not something that you can rely on, okay? It has to come from a lawyer that you pay something to, okay? Whatever it is, $10 a month, whatever it is. And you can say that you are their client, okay? So drop some comments. Let me know what you guys think. I'll talk to you all soon.